All right, and we are back. And we are now back to Mark Waid. This is Mark Waid book 7, and this collects this collects the life story of the Flash, which is a really, really cool story. It's actually kind of it's taken from there was a book in one of the stories in Mark Waid's run, in The Return of Barry Allen, where there's actually a book that's devoted to the life of Barry, and Mark actually decided to actually write that book in real life to make it seem like this is the actual book that's from that comic. Basically, it's written in a way where it's the book written by Iris in their continuity, but in reality it's written by Mark Waid. I think that's how I explained that well. But yeah, it's actually really cool, and again, does give more of a modern sense of the modern Silver Age stuff, explains some things. Unfortunately, though, one of the things that it does do, though, is that it does build up probably one of my least favorite stories and one of my least favorite villains, which is Cobalt Blue, where we have basically Barry's got an evil twin. I don't like the story. I think it's dumb, and I'm glad that they haven't touched Cobalt Blue since then. It's always funny, like, we're always, like, people for years have been wanting him on the show, and I think they're finally going to do it this year. Like everyone was always like, oh, Eddie Thawne should be Cobalt Blue, and I'm like, why? Why do you want Cobalt Blue? Like, he is a cool villain, like, he's got a cool look and all that. I just don't like the whole idea of him being Barry's evil fucking twin. Like, that's just stupid. But anyway, this collects the life story of the Flash, the Flash Secret Files #1, Speed Force #1, the Flash 80-page Giant #1, and the Flash 142 for 150, as well as the Flash 1 million, which was part of the DC 1 million event. And yeah. And we are now almost at the end of Mark Waid's run. This is the last volume. This is book 8. And this contains Flash 151 from 163, Annual number 12, and Flash Files #2. What's cool, though, the fact that they collect 163 specifically is because that issue was not written by Mark Waid. Mark Waid's run finishes at 162. The thing is, though, is that there is 163 is kind of a gap. It's basically a filler issue right in between Mark Waid and the next writer who will come on, who I will talk about in a second. I'm sure most people will know who it is. But I think it's actually cool that for us collectors that it's nice to not have that issue be orphaned. That it's just like, oh, it's one issue, throw it in there. So it works out perfectly. Which brings us to the very next run, and one of my favorite runs, and probably in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people's opinion, it really goes between Geoff Johns or Mark Waid, but this is The Flash by Geoff Johns, Volume 1. If Wally is your man, this is the run to read. I mean, I love Mark Waid's run as well. Don't get me wrong, and I know a lot of people do say, like, oh, if it was for Waid's run, there would be no John's run. And don't get me wrong, Waid's run is great. There is some really good stuff in there, and it reinvented everything. But to me personally, this is one of the best runs on The Flash, and the best run for Wally West. But let's take a look here. The contents of this one are The Flash 164 for 191, The Flash Our World's at War #1, The Flash Iron Heights #1, which is a really significant issue because it actually introduces a lot of brand new villains, and it's really cool. The Flash Secret Files and Origins #3, and DC First, The Flash and Superman #1, which also was collected in that Flash Superman trade I showed you before. So that's Volume 1. Move this back. This is Volume 2 of Geoff Johns. And this collects 192 through 225 and Wonder Woman 214 because there was a crossover with Wonder Woman. What's cool about this too is that this is it. This is Geoff Johns' run. It's just these two Omnis. I mean, I originally had it collected in like a 5, kind of similar to the Martin Wade stuff here. I had it collected in about like 5 thick trades, but now it's just releasing these 2 Amis, and that's his run. Well, at least that's his first run, because he'll have another run later on. But this is the first run that's completed. So then in between, though, we have another event. I have to go and get it. Excuse me. Go, I tore around my room here. We have another event. Bear with me. Oh boy. Which is, of course... Okay, just make sure that they get the stripe. Which is, of course, Infinite Crisis. This event is actually also written by Geoff Johns. And this is a pretty fucking great event. This is actually one of my all-time favorite events. I apologize for my cursing, too. This is a great event. And it is pretty significant for Flash because, of course, usually in Crises, something happens to a Flash. And Wally ends up going away for a bit. And as a result of that, we end up getting a new Flash. Come back here to the Flash Museum, as I like to call it. And we go into these 2 trades here, which is a new series called The Flash, the Fastest Man Alive. So this actually stops The Flash Volume 2 for a bit. We will get back to it eventually, but for right now, the Flash ends at around 2:30, because after Geoff Johns leaves, which, by the way, another thing I want to mention about Geoff Johns, one of the stories in there is Blitz. That, to me, is one of the best Flash stories of all time. It is a great story. If there's a Flash story you should read, it should be that one. I mean, there's a lot in there, but if you're going to pick one of them, that'd be one of them. But anyway, Flash Volume 2 ends at about like 2:30. So after Geoff Johns, because he ends at 2:25. So there's about 5 like filler issues. And then after that, Infinite Crisis comes. And then we go to this book, The Flash, the Fastest Man Alive, where we have a new Flash, a.k.a. Bart Allen. And this series is okay. This of course, collects the first 6 issues, I believe. I want to say. Yeah, I think it's about the first 6 issues. And then this is Volume 2. And this collects the rest of the series as well as the special All Flash #1. And it is a good series. Personally, I like this book a little more than Volume 1. I like this one a little more. But yeah, it's not the best story. And it didn't really do well to the point where only after about 13 issues, we got to bring Wally back. Bart was a fine Flash, but he wasn't great. I think the biggest problem with it is that, and I noticed this especially reading the first volume, is that it felt like they were trying to make Flash into almost like Peter Parker, like Ultimate Spider-Man type. Like Bart even looks a lot like Ultimate Peter Parker with like the same hairstyle. You know what? I'll show you. Like, he almost kind of looks like that in a way. He's got that same kind of hairdo. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, like, there he is, like, right there. Like, does that kind of look like Ultimate Peter Parker to you guys? I mean, maybe I'm just crazy. That's a better picture of him. Yeah, like, does that look like Ultimate Peter Parker? I don't know. Maybe I'm just wrong. But anyway, so that's the end of that part. And we will go into part... What are we at? Part 3? No, part 4. We'll go into part 4, which will cover Wally's return, and then another Flash's return.